So let's talk about regrets, and maybe for the last time. But essentially, regrets, as we talked about before, can be helpful, can teach us something. And we talked about some fundamental ways that regrets work with us. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about what we can do about regrets, some practical things that we can do. One story that always captured me is that I really like Rome. They talk about men thinking about Rome every 20 seconds. I think about Rome a lot. I don't know why. But when Julius Caesar had a problem, what he would do is he had like this little battle map going on of what the war he was in at that particular time looked like. And what he would do is he would turn it around and look at it from all sides. And it seems like a really easy thing to do. Like, why wouldn't he think of that? But a lot of people didn't because he wanted to see what the battlefield looked like from his opponent's point of view. He wanted to be able to do that. And so for us too, that if we can somehow change the table up a little bit, make a different aspect of what we're looking at, they talk, we can maybe see some mistakes that we're doing a little bit wrong. The way to prevent mistakes, but essentially what you do is before you're going to take on a new endeavor, think what could go wrong with this, and then try to, like, if this project fails, if this plan fails, what went wrong? And then write those things out ahead of time and then try to tackle them early so they don't go wrong. That is one way to use your experience to avoid future regrets. So, for example, when I went on this drug, I know that from the time that I was on Jenny Craig, because it was a very low-fat diet, I had a lot of stomach problems. So I started writing down what would go wrong on this medication. And for the most part, when I look at Reddit and some other places, what goes wrong with people? They have stomach problems because they don't change their diet. They have stomach problems because they don't get enough fiber and protein and water, which is why those are my big 3 focus points. I learned, I think, from other people's regrets. And I became very dedicated to them because if things go very poorly, you can end up with health problems and then get taken off of this drug. I want to be on this drug until I'm done. I want to walk off of this drug, which I don't know if they let you off this drug, but I want to walk off of this drug at my goal weight or very close to it. My friends are all battling that 10 pounds they can never lose. I want to be in that battle. I want to get to that place where I can battle my last 10 pounds. So for me, I wanted to go through and figure out what went wrong for people and then try to go against it. I know people that are on those drugs and they don't change their eating because a lot of it has to do with family. Well, if I don't eat Thanksgiving with my family, if I don't go out for Friday night fish fry, it's what we do. It's our family. And I just started learning it's enough for me to be with my people than it is to do those things and then feel sick afterwards. And they would understand it. My friends understand. I don't want to be sick on this drug. And getting sick on this drug can be very negative to your health. So I started looking at the table a little bit differently and then doing a postmortem. What failed? So I also didn't have very many stomach medications in my house. Now I have a whole array there because you don't want to wake up in the middle of the night with some kind of stomach woe and you don't have anything. So now I'm fully loaded with stomach medications. Then I started looking at foods and pre-planning the types of food I think would be good. Now, it happened that when I started taking the drug, some of the food that I used to like, I no longer like. And some of the foods that I wasn't that interested in, like cottage cheese, I suddenly started liking. I think you can't anticipate the changes that this drug might make in your own eating habits, but I knew enough core things to have around in the house so I'd have things to eat. The other thing about dealing with regret is start thinking about gratitude. And I know that sounds very canned. A lot of people talk about gratitude. I am religious, and so I try to always remember to be grateful to God for things. But part of the problem is that we forget. Now, I talked about the last time about how, what if you were in your 20s and you took this fabulous vacation, spent all your money, got hugely into debt, and it was a struggle for you to pay off, but you had a fabulous time. You are now grateful that you didn't lose your job at that point and it became a disaster. Or maybe you decided not to go on that vacation and you are grateful that you were able to put that money to good use, get yourself out of debt, and work on your life. There are so many things that can go wrong in lives. And I think that sometimes when I look at some people who have a very woe is me kind of attitude in life, they often don't see the lives of other people. And so they don't feel grateful for anything because they don't think their lives are great. And I guess I always saw it like that. I'm a history book reader. I saw things in history that go wrong in people's lives. Not only that, I'm a news watcher. I read a lot of news. I read a lot of articles. I try to understand what's going out there in the world around me. And I see life can be horrible for people. So why I had a very rough upbringing, a very rough childhood, it wasn't as bad as some people's who had it. I remember when I was growing up on the military base, my dad was an alcoholic and he was pretty bad about it and came home, I would say 3/4 of his time after work drunk and was completely belligerent. But you know what? 3 days a week, he came home and he was a gem. He was really smart. We played chess, we played board games, we went on adventures. He was very much an outdoors guy. And so while it was terrible, three out of the 4 days of the week, he was there for me. And he taught me how to fix cars and he taught me a lot about the world around me. I am grateful for that. And so I think you can be grateful for certain things. Daniel Pink even mentioned something called regret optimization framework. And that's where we will start to then anticipate our regrets. And that way we can use past regrets as a way of forecasting what might go wrong in the future. So, for example, I have been places where my phone died and I didn't have a battery. Now I carry a battery with me everywhere. That's pretty simple, right? But there are times where, again, I tend to go into a very positive mood. But my best friend, she is prepared for every crisis because what if it gets cold? What if it gets rainy? What if this happens or that happens? And she has a medical kit. She has common medications. She's always prepared for everything. And so anytime anything goes wrong, she's right there and she's prepared. So can you take those past regrets and turn them into anticipations of something that may go wrong? I even did a podcast about Bobby Knight's book where he talks about the power of negative thinking. I don't think we have to go that far, but absolutely using our past regrets to make sure we don't have future regrets is going to be great. One year, my friend and I went camping and it got down unexpectedly to 29 degrees. It was supposed to be around 40 and it went to 29. Now I'm fine. I'm from the North Woods. She froze. So now when she goes camping, she has all these techniques in place to help keep her warm. The biggest thing I think too when it comes to regrets is to be kind to yourself. And again, that's a very floofy statement. You'll find a million podcasts and YouTube channel things about that. But instead, realize at the time, wherever it is you have regrets, one, you were probably a different person with different experiences. You might not have the experiences you have today, which are going to help you fix things. At that time, maybe you didn't know what to do. When I was younger and I blew through money like crazy, I didn't have a lot of ways of dealing with stress. I had impulse control problems. I still do sometimes, but I was a different human being. You can't have regrets about a person you weren't 20 years ago. So be a little bit kind to yourself. But then the other part of it is that you don't know what you were thinking at that moment. When you bought something or you went on that huge expensive vacation, maybe you were really going through a tough time and you just needed something good in your life to happen. So just understand, you were a different place. You were a different person back then. And you know what? We all make mistakes. Dan Peek says that we make hundreds of decisions every day. And you know what? A big chunk of them are going to just be wrong. This is where you're going to accept yourself and then start moving forward. He talks too about reframing things, and I'm a big fan of reframing things. And reframing sounds a little bit like you're lying to yourself, but what it is instead is it's putting something into a better perspective. I tried out for a job I wasn't qualified for because I sometimes, back then when I was younger, did not read things fully. And so this job wanted someone who had a PhD in library science. Now, I worked at a library my whole life. I didn't have a PhD in library science. And it was for a newspaper to be their chief librarian. So you would store all the documents and start working towards computerizing, because at the time it wasn't computerized. And then the last part is let's say we went to war with some country we never heard of. Jill, quick, get me all the articles on this country I never heard of. Help me write a, backup piece about what this country is and what went wrong here. Oh, that sounded like the best job in the world. I applied for that job, and you know what? I came in second. And the top 5 people all had PhDs in library science, but the guy liked me. Because he saw the computer as being the future of this project, and he thought Jill's the kind of person who could get that done. He, in the end, had to hire, he said, unfortunately, someone with that PhD because it became a requirement of the organization. You know what that taught me? I could have gone back and thought, wow, that stinks. I should have read better. Why didn't I read that better? I was disappointed. But what it taught me is that you should go for things that you may not feel qualified to do. Even on paper, you're not qualified to do because there's a chance that maybe you'll get that thing. The other thing, too, is that you can reframe it as a learning experience or an adventure or a step. Now I know better. I'm not going to do that same thing again. If you beat yourself into the ground about it, you're always going to have problems. I think even Scott Adams wrote a whole book about reframing. And I think the whole book are just reframes. That if this is what went wrong, how can you reframe it? So let's take a look at my weight. I didn't lose weight. I gained a lot of weight. Some of it was through computer gaming, but it wasn't all through computer gaming. It was because I became a computer nerd. And the second I learned how to read and do research and learn things on my own, and then when I got my first computer, I did a deep dive into this. I was really into it. And so you could look at this as Jill got very overweight by sitting at her computer all the time. Jill qualified herself to become a computer expert and eventually a software expert. And guess what she does for a living now? She's a software expert for hospital software. It's the same story. It's absolutely the same story, but instead of looking at all the negatives for it, you could say, at least I ended up getting an occupation that's been good for my life. So reframing a story and seeing things as a journey, part of a process, part of an adventure, it was a step for you to learn something valuable. Absolutely. So think about the stories that you're telling yourself. And then the other part is that when you're looking at your new goals, this time set more realistic goals. But not only that, understand the realism of getting your goal. So I'm going to lose this weight. And obviously Mounjaro is a big part of making that better and allowing me to do that because I got stuck in this metabolic syndrome. But what if I imagine all my problems are solved? What if I imagine my life is just going to be so amazing when I lose weight and I'm going to have all these men calling me up and asking me out on dates and, maybe I'll get married and, things that I always wanted in my life to have happen. Maybe not. Maybe Jill is just going to be a thinner Jill in a year. And those things might not happen. So I think having realistic goals that I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to be able to be physically more able to do things, but maybe I'm not really going to be able to do the 500-mile hike in Spain that I want to do. Being a little bit more realistic about what's going to not only be the goal, but what's going to happen when you get to your goal. So many people have problems because they think, oh, when I get my goal, life is going to be perfect. Nothing will be terrible. When I get this new job, I'm going to have so much money. I will never have money problems again. And all of that is probably unlikely true. So being a little bit more realistic is going to help you. Then the other part of it too is have bigger goals. Don't just focus on the weight loss. Start thinking about your health in general, because that will take so much pressure off of this weight. Right now, when I'm not losing weight on this drug, it can be very disappointing. But then I also think this is a good time for me to practice, because I know that the drug is not working all that well for me, on my discipline. I'm still eating a balanced diet. I'm still eating a good diet, even though this drug has its effects worn off on me. This is a little chance for some training wheels for me to see if I can keep going on it. And if I focus on my health instead of my weight, I got more things to think about when it comes to my health. I still can exercise, I still can eat a good diet, and I can start tackling some of those things like calcium that I just don't get enough of. Potassium, that's another one. Then the other part of it is that you start looking at your regrets, is start looking at the things that really trigger you, really make you upset. if you have regrets because every time you eat a cheesecake and now you have regrets, what causes you to eat the cheesecake? Can you go back and look at those steps that get you there? I used to drive by this restaurant when I went home at work, and I was the person who worked late because I'm not much of a morning person. So there I was at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, right by the steak place that did carry out. You know how many times I walked out of there with food from this place? Because I could order it online and on my way home, go through this drive-through window pickup, pick up this meal, stick it in my bag. I don't have to cook. And I got this amazing meal. That was my trigger. I started going the other way to the highway because I didn't want to drive by that restaurant anymore. And then also now start looking at the progress you're making. And sometimes the progress is going to be an app on your phone telling you about your weight loss. Sometimes your progress is going to be a journal showing you how you feel differently. Sometimes your progress is going to be your friend saying, hey, I remember the last time we hiked up this hill, you were huffing and puffing and now you're not. So you got to start looking for the ways to have these successes and start celebrating and having small victories. Again, I bought myself a couple of shirts sort of in a celebration of me losing this amount of weight. And I mentioned it the last time when I said you can also get professional help, and I was talking about exercise. But the other part is you can get professional help for the mental parts of it too. If you need help overcoming things that are causing you to overeat or eat poorly or to treat yourself poorly, maybe getting some help, a lot of insurance covers that these days, might help you get out of this rut. And again, I think the biggest thing that you can do for regret is start action now. Even if the action, small steps, positive steps, and small little bites, nothing will beat that. Then a million books you read, a ton of planning, but just start taking some action, even if it's tiny, and just keep going, build on it. Even if you can get yourself to exercise 1 day a week, maybe in a couple weeks, you'll exercise 2 days a week. Or if you can get rid of whatever food, let's say that you have this addiction to chocolate chip cookies. Can you get rid of just that? Say, I'm not going to go on a diet, but I'm not going to bring chocolate chip cookies into the house. I know I lose control with that. That's just a small step in the right direction. All right. Well, I appreciate you listening to this. Please remember that you can always email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. You can also message me on YouTube. All my podcasts are here on YouTube, so you can listen to them if you want. At some point, I'll figure out how to organize my YouTube channel so they're a little bit better organized. But you can listen to them. I hope this is helpful to you. And you can always check out abetterlifeinsmallsteps.com. That is where my headquarters of all my podcasts, and my friend Em, she writes a blog there that's about just happy living and things like that. Thanks so much for listening.